Hey, everybody, and welcome to Into the Terminal. It's our last episode of the year, and so Nate and I decided we were going to do something a little bit offbeat. Namely, don't do these things to your machines.
Yeah, usually we tell you what not to break. Today we're going to break a whole bunch of stuff.
And
We're not even going to bother to fix it.
we thought about things that would be like unrecoverable, right? In the past, we've
Yeah.
done shooting episodes where it's like something's broken and you get to troubleshoot and fix it. Well, these are things that like you're not coming back from.
Like that
So-
time I deleted Boot and recovered it on the show. That was fun.
That was,
like
and
a
that was
highlight.
like quite impressive.
That's like a highlight. We gotta make sure we link that show.
So why don't we jump into the terminal and get started breaking machines in unrecoverable ways?
Let's do that. Give me just a moment here. That's the wrong share. Let's get the right share. Here we go.
There we go. All right. So the first thing is a lot of times on the show, we use DD. We do it to do stuff like copy things from never-ending stream of null characters into memory to like make a long-running process. We've used it to create files of a certain size. But on Linux, when you root, it's expected that you know what you're doing. And that means that when you make mistakes, they can be pretty catastrophic. And so, for example, if we were to DD using our input file of dev0, which is a never-ending stream of zeros, and output file is dev sda. Oh no! I'm like overwriting my hard drive with zeros, slowly wiping out all of the data. And at this point, it's gone fairly far. Let's see if I go over here.
It doesn't take much. Like it really doesn't take much.
Oh, I don't have his IP address. I could, if I had another open connection to this machine, I could kill with SIGUser1, and DD would like tell me how much it's written out so far. But what'll happen, like it'll just keep going, and then everything on my desk is gone, and we're no longer workable. So if I Control C, right, it copied out 612 megs, which is all of my boot partition plus some of my slash file system. Things are not great. And if I were to reboot the machine, it would not come back.
That's absolutely true. I had an incident where I did this to a virtual machine on the host that it was running on, right? I was trying to add an additional disk and I accidentally overwrote one of the disk files. And let me tell you, the amount of time it takes to move from the enter button to the Control C button is enough time to completely destroy a disk. Because that's how quick I realized my mistake, right? And the funny thing was the machine was still running. It still appeared to have all of its data, but it just slowly devolved into disk errors and eventually was unusable. So in a virtual instance, right, I guess maybe some of the disk was in memory. I don't really know. But it ended up being unrecoverable, like total loss.
Yeah, and it's easy to do. I'll actually show another example a little bit later where it's like, you mean to do it on a partition, but you don't type the partition number. So yeah, there's a reason why DD is nicknamed Device Destroyer. When it's really device to device copy. But all right, another one to never do. This is one of my favorites too. DNF remove bash. And I'll throw in a -y. And we use -y a lot on the show because we just want it to run without interrupting us to answer yes to all the questions.
Yes, I really did mean it. Right? Yeah.
Right. But the reality is like, oh, they fixed it. Hey, go us. Let me use -- skip broken.
So disappointing.
Well, there's a few times where like we can mess things up and or try to mess things up, and Linux will now save us from ourselves.
Still no good. Wow. This is why you're supposed to test before we go live, Scott.
Yeah. Oh, and
some other important thing like glibc.
It's telling us exactly what the problem is. So if you remove bash, one of the
Yeah.
dependencies is DNF. And so by removing bash, you're also removing DNF. When you remove DNS, and it'll remove RPM, how do you get your software back again? So
Yeah.
on older systems, it actually didn't have this fail-safe to keep you from destroying your system and making it unrecoverable. But wow, DNF is smart now. Who knew?
Yeah. All right. So we're going to switch over to mine here. Give me just a second. So I've made a VM, which I'm going to try to recover between incidents here. But anyway, so we hinted at this one on our last show. Everybody's favorite, just like total decimate the system thing, is rm-rf slash, and of course there's a protection in place for that now, right? Right. So if I just did that, it's like, no, that's dangerous. You shouldn't do that. But the cool thing is if you just add a star to the end, which basically says kind of the same thing, except
Well,
instead of pointing it at a directory, you're pointing at all the things in the directory, right?
well, yeah. So the star gets expanded, and basically you're like
Yeah,
actually running the command rm-rf slash etsy slash var slash user
right.
slash bin slash sbin, right? So it expands out to all the subdirectories of slash. Yeah.
So we're just gonna hit enter, and of course, included in that is things like proc and sys. So that's why we have all these errors. Now, I'm going to warn you that when I did this last time, it really terrified because at one point, Web Console puked on me. I'm assuming because of the sheer amount of output. I don't know. Something died. And I'm like, did I just destroy my hypervisor? Like, there's no way I just destroyed my hypervisor. But yeah, we'll see if it happens again. But eventually, this will kernel panic, which I think is pretty much when it gets to the kernel, right? It'll eventually just kind of puke. I don't know if we want to wait that long, but that will be the eventual outcome here.
Yeah, and I've seen it behave differently on different systems. I've seen it where like it'll remove until the RM command is removed, and then it can't remove anymore because the RM command is gone. Um,
Right.
but yeah, like the hope you have a backup, Nate, because this machine ain't
Yeah,
coming back.
I absolutely have a backup. Now, I don't know if it's to the point where it's unrecoverable yet. And let's see if
Uh,
Web Console
Even if
pukes
it's
on me
not,
here.
like you've let it run long enough that enough has been removed.
Yeah,
Um, you'd be hard pressed to like know what to repair.
yeah,
Um, like at this point, you should just do a full system restore from a backup, then try to like actually restore files to it.
yeah, which is exactly what I'm going to do since I have that snapshot. But yeah, if someone had run this on a production system, or if some malicious person that just wanted to mess up your day had gotten into your systems and ran this, yeah, you better just replace the system because it's not coming back from this. Oh, Billy Holmes has mentioned the good old fun fork bomb in the chat. Now it's moved on to sys. The last time I tried this, it wasn't much longer before it kernel panicked. So sure this is exciting for everybody. Actually, while this is running, I can start talking about my next one because I don't have a demo for the next one. And this was just a total experiment on my part. I thought, wouldn't it be fun if the thing we did wrong was only partially our fault? It wasn't a command that we put in there wrong. It was just like poor hygiene. So what I did is I stood up a cloud instance on Amazon's AWS, and I deployed like a normal RHEL 9.5 system. Didn't do anything special to it except turn on T-log so I could see what was going on. And then I made a user account named admin with a password of admin, and I turned SSH password authentication back on, and then I sat back and waited. Now, for fun, I deployed a second system about a day later that I applied disastig to because I figured like that's about as secure as you get out of the box. And I did the exact same thing, except for some reason I couldn't get T-log to turn on, and I didn't really have the time to troubleshoot why. Every time I try to run T-log, it gave me this permission error. Apparently, my system was too secure for my security tools. But at any rate, so I couldn't see session logs on that one. But on the machine that was um, just a normal RHEL 9.5 box, a number of people got access to the admin account that I created. Now, again, I didn't give this any elevated privileges, um, but and as far as I could tell, nobody got escalated privileges. Right? I got some interesting T-log output, so I figured out, or I should, maybe just attackers in general. Oh, there it died. My my session just died on my thing here. Let me refresh that, and I'll show you the kernel panic because that's usually what happened next. Yeah, now it's giving me an error here. Hang on.
That's okay. We knew when we were doing it that it'd be unrecoverable.
Yeah, so there it is. It didn't kernel panic this time. It's giving me. Why does it show me a login? Shouldn't be able to. Huh? What's going to happen if I try to log in, Scott?
I don't know. Oh,
Nothing.
it already Etsy, so there's nothing for it to actually authenticate the user.
Oh, I know why it's at a login, because it switched away from the serial console. Oh, the command must have finished. Hey, we hosed that system. All right. So anyway, let me get back to my description of all the things that went on with my machine while we continue here. Let me see if I can get the. There we go. So a number of nasty people had put things like there was a new binary they put in my admin user's home directory called SSHD. I don't think they ever got it to run though, because it I couldn't find it running. I couldn't find any evidence that they'd run it. I don't know what it was supposed to do. I would love to hand this off to someone who does like binary. What's the word I'm looking for? They figure out what binaries are supposed to do. I'd love to find out what it was supposed to do. The other thing that they ran was a file called DHPCD, which I think was named that way so that it would blend into the background if I looked at PS. It was either a botnet or a crypto miner, because whatever it was, whenever it was running, it just like totally hammered the system. For that, sorry, go ahead.
I was going to ask if you ran strings against either of those binaries to see if they had like comments or some stuff that you could figure out from the uncompiled.
I did on both of them, and I didn't find anything that was that compelling. So forensics, there you go. That's the word I'm looking for. Binary forensics. I want to find out what these things are supposed to do. But I did reach out to some of my friends in the InfoSec community, and nobody bit. No one said, "Send that to me. I want to find out what it does." So, if anybody's watching and they want a copy of these things, let me know. But I'm going to make you sign a disclaimer that Red Hat is not held liable for whatever's in these things.
Well, and I think, part of the reason why they were running or in the home directory, usually when you have a cloud instance, root access is turned off, and you have a regular person that can log in. But what else does that regular person have on their account? Sudo.
Usually, yes, they would have sudo.
Yeah. And so it's like they could sudo and then spread their stuff all over your system, because that's normally how these systems are set up.
Right. And I was tempted like yesterday. I'm like, I'm going to up the ante and turn on sudo rules for this user, but I never did that, because I figured it would have just got hosed quickly enough that I wouldn't have been able to get anything useful out of it anyway, and it just would have given a bad guy another platform to do something on. And I figured that was not really the goal of my experiment. But at any rate, the only really weird thing was it looks like they were using some method to execute things over SSH that didn't actually give them a shell, because I wasn't getting full T-log logs out of their sessions. So I'm thinking they were doing like SSH with the command pass directly in, like direct SSH piping. Is that what that's called? Because I was getting command outputs, but not command inputs, which was still enlightening, but not all that useful. One of them put an SSH key on there so they could get on there. One of them kept changing the admin password on me. So I made a cron job to set it back to admin, because I didn't want to limit other people's abilities to get into the machine.
Nice. So
yeah.
Thing not to do in prod is
don't turn on SSH password authentication, and don't set a bad password for your system. All right, and because I was talking, I didn't get a chance to restore my snapshot, so give me just a second here, because I have to use that for my next system, or my next demo.
Well, while you're doing that, I can blow something up.
Well, it'll just take me a second here. I just need to turn the machine back on now.
Oh, and by the way, JSCAR says send him your binaries that you want analyzed, and he will happily dig into them.
Happily. I will happily send them to you. All right, let me get back to my console here. Why is it not on the screen? There we go. Because I made the screen too small. I'm going to switch to a serial console because that works better here. All right. So, fresh, clean, restored machine is booting back up. The next thing I was going to show you all, and this actually happened to me in prod. I forget why. I can't remember the context. I just remember that it was a real pain in the butt because uh, when this happens, your system's not really broken. It's still running. It still has your services up and running, but it's severely hampered. And the thing I'm talking about is when your RPM database gets blown away. I forget if it was a disk corruption thing or if somebody was trying to clean up, free up some disk space and they deleted the wrong thing. But I remember going back and forth actually with Red Hat support on this for quite a while, trying to figure out like what are the options here. And it just turned out to be there was no clean solution other than reinstalling everything on the machine or getting an RPM database maybe from another machine that had an identical package set, which good luck, right? How many machines have an identical package set? Um, I guess that would have been at least possible. But I'm going to demonstrate this here. So we're just going to first of all, let me get my demo package here. Now we're going to just as a quick example, I'm going to show you. Because this is going to be like my guinea pig package, like we always use. I'm going to tell this no, I don't want to install it just yet, but just I want to show you kind of what the dependencies look like when we try to install HTTPD right now on a working non-broken system, right? So you can see there's 12 packages in my list of dependencies if I were to try to install HTTPD on my fixed system or my normal system, right? Before I've broken anything. If I just go down to like varlib, you'll see there's an RPM directory here, and inside of there are these SQLite databases. And this is what RPM uses to tell RPM and DNF, I guess, what packages are actually installed on the system, what versions they are, things like that. You might say, well, the packages are installed already, right? Why do I need this? Well, this is all that metadata that goes along with the package, right? Sure, you could ask each binary on your system what version's installed, but instead RPM keeps this separate database with all that metadata in it. So we're just going to remove that whole directory, right? So now you're going to notice it's like, nope, not there now, not there at all. Now, the thing I learned while figuring out this particular problem is that when I did it, it was on like RHEL 7, right? And RPM would just spit out a bunch of errors saying it couldn't get to its database. So I thought that was exactly what was going to happen here, but it actually doesn't. If I try to run an RPM command here, so let's just do like an RPM-QA, it comes back with nothing. It doesn't give me any errors. It doesn't say the database is gone. And that's because it, in the background, quietly recreated it. There we go. We have databases back already. And you might think, oh, well, that means we're fine, right? But remember, RPM QA is supposed to show me everything that's installed on the system, and it gave me 0, zilch, not a result. That means it doesn't think there's any packages here. And if you look at the size of these files from before and after, right, that's a much larger database before than it is now, right? And that's because all that package data was in there, and it had nothing to actually rebuild it from. It just made a new empty database because RPM needs a database to run from. So if I try to like DNF install HTTPD now, which is what I did before, not only is this not going to work, it also says this little error here that it doesn't know what release I'm even on, right? And you might say, oh, well, I can just tell it what release, and it should work, right? Well, kinda. Give it a moment. So that other error that it got there was the that it couldn't find the repository because it didn't know what release version. Now it says it has to install 124 packages to install Apache's HTTPD. And these are all things we know are there, like, glibc, Red Hat release, PAM. It wants to install PAM.
Well,
I don't know what'll happen. Sorry, go ahead.
database has all the installed packages, and so when DNF is calculating the package dependencies, there's there's none. There's none installed. So it's like
Exactly.
dependencies that it thinks it needs.
It's going all the way down, right? It's just all the way down that rabbit hole. Now, you could also try installing directly from an RPM, which is what I copied on the system just before we tried here. So if I did like a DNF install on tilde Nate, I think is where I put it. I put the HTTPD RPM in there. Obviously, I didn't put any of the dependent packages. So if I just did an RPM install on this, it would tell me there were dependency problems. But DNF will try to do the dependency solution resolution, and of course, it's going to give me a similar error. I forgot the dash release for to tell it what the release we're talking about. Oh, this is actually giving me a different error. Oh, it's package conflicts now. Even better. nothing provides HTTPD core. I don't know if that's because I typoed something there. No, I got the release version right. At any rate, the system is broken in a way that doesn't feel terrible until you try to do pretty much any administration task on it that requires a package. And then you pretty quickly realize, like, I can't do anything to this system. I can't install anything without some serious work to try to repair the damage that was done. And there we go. RPM database. Gone.
Yes, super.
Not good.
Not good. Although that's one where, like, if you had a backup, you could put that database back from your backup.
Yes.
Do people?
Yeah. In this case, you could recover by having a backup of the RPM database. And I'm going to tell you that after that happened to us on our production system, we added var lib RPM to our backup routine. Surprise, right? All right. I think you got some more for us, right, Scott?
I do.
Switch on over to yours.
So the other thing is when you're doing things like copying files around, that's another place where you can, like, specify the wrong thing and get yourself into real trouble. So for example, if we copy bin cat to sbin hold on, which system D? PSAUX, crap. So what PID number 1 is user lib system D. So if we copy bin cat into user lib system D. Man, I did a terrible job testing before doing this today, Nate.
I mean, I don't know what to tell you, Scott. I will say that while you flounder, Shantanu brought up an interesting question.
There we go.
They asked, what if you use DNF reinstall on your packages, right? And you could. I thought the same thing, and I did have an example for that, but I forgot to mention it while I had the demo. But DNF doesn't know what's installed. So if you tell it to reinstall, it says it's not installed. So if I did like DNF reinstall, I don't know, glibc, it won't reinstall it because it doesn't think glibc is installed. It can't find out what version is installed, and it just pukes and says nope.
Yep. All right. So I copied a binary over another binary by accident because I was sloppy.
You found system D. Good job.
I did. But realize that system D is like a pretty important thing because it's the first initial process on our machines. So
Kinda.
if I were to reboot this machine, not going to survive a reboot because as it tries to pass off process ID 1 to system D, what it gets back is a cat, which doesn't really help it boot the system. Now, this is
I mean, why not?
we probably could recover if we figured it out now with something like DNF reinstall, because we could overwrite our mangled binary with a fresh copy of a correct binary.
Right. Yeah, as long as you catch it before you reboot the system or before pretty much anything tries to execute system D.
Yeah, or like, geez, what would happen if I restarted the service? Probably not going to do so good.
Try it.
You're thinking I have a service to do.
Just restart SSHD.
Uh, it's working.
It didn't return an error.
Probably because the binary is loaded in memory,
It could be.
and so it can operate because it hasn't been replaced by cat yet in memory. But rebooting would make that not work. So like we're operating okay for the moment. This is the other thing is like delayed consequences from making mistakes, right? Like everything seems
Yeah.
fine. You reboot and like the wheels come off your machine.
Yeah. Yeah. The RPM database is a perfect example of that. And the machine will appear to be fine, and then all of a sudden you try to do anything, and it's just no, this is not fine.
So, and in fact, I could try to reboot this guy. Um,
You can't see the
I don't
console
think
though, can you?
I don't
That'd be
think
helpful if you could see the console.
nope, not coming back. But thankfully, I have this
Yeah,
other machine
usually.
here where I can mangle one more thing.
Yeah, let's break something else, Scott. We still have time left. 2 minutes.
All right, so yeah, did you know that you can induce kernel panics at your leisure?
Awesome. Let's
Yeah,
see what that looks like.
bam.
Doesn't look like much. I guess if you saw the console, it would look better.
Uh,
So there's valid reasons you might do this, right? Like you could initiate a panic so that it would do things like a core dump if you have that enabled, right? Not a core dump. What's the word I'm looking for? Kernel dump.
yeah, kdump to test out that it actually will create a kernel core with your kdump configuration. Um, there are other things like maybe you have an HA setup and you want to test
Yeah.
fail your service to the other nodes in your HA setup. So you can like kernel panic this box, which will then kill it, which will then allow its HA partner to recognize that it's failed and pull all the services over. So so yeah, and usually it just kind of like freezes and dies. So
Yeah. For some reason, these instances aren't freezing for you.
no,
Scott, I'm gonna have to talk to your manager about how well you prepare for these demos.
I know it was a busy week. And it was a busy week.
It
So
was a busy week. Surprisingly, considering it's like the week before a holiday, you'd think it'd be super chill. No, it was not super chill. All
oh,
right, so
he's dead now.
oh, did it die now? Sure. Right after I switched it. Let me. You're gonna have to prove that to me, Scott. I'm switching back. Okay, you've been redeemed.
So and then oftentimes there will be like a watchdog. So if you kernel panic, maybe it reboots your machine automatically and tries to get it going.
Yeah.
So it depending on your configuration and some of your settings, it may kernel panic, which will then pause a reboot, which you'll recover from eventually.
Cool. Well, I have one more to show us. Let me switch back to me. That's what I was about to do when I thought you were not going to get us anything useful there, Scott.
Failed at kernel panic. So thanks for comments.
All right, so this is another one that is this one's recoverable, but it'll be quite annoying if you run into it. And I want to say last year when we talked about holiday pranks you might pull on coworkers, we touched on this one, but I had to bring it back. So with systemd, of course, you can change your default boot target, right? So you can say I want to boot into graphical mode, or I want to boot into multi-user mode, which is just command line text mode, which of course is the right one, as we all know. But you can also tell it to change pretty much whatever boot target you want, and there's a whole bunch of them. And there's one that's like shutdown. There's another one that's reboot. So it's really simple to change. You just do systemctl and then set default and then reboot dot target. Right now, obviously, this is a little contrived. Why would you do this on accident? But you could do it on accident. But again, this is the sort of thing where it doesn't instantly look like a problem. But if I look at system, I think it is slash default.target, it's going to link over to reboot. Right now, if I were to reboot this system, it's going to just basically go into a boot loop, which, to be honest, I don't see that often unless I'm on a Windows server.
I don't even see it on Windows servers anymore.
Yeah, I know. I just remember back in the days when it did happen on Windows servers and how infuriating it was because it was so difficult to troubleshoot. Because when you're in that boot loop, it's really hard to like interrupt it. But in this case, it's already rebooted a couple times. I don't know if you're catching that, but you see, it's just barely getting past the initial initRD stuff, and then it just immediately reboots. So basically, what I would have to do is get into Grub, change the default boot, or go into single user mode, and or I should say break, go into RD break, and change that symlink from reboot back over to multi-user or graphical, whatever it is what it's supposed to be set at.
Yeah, and we were talking before the show when we were planning it, and I mentioned that instead of reboot, because it's really obvious that it's rebooting over and over and over again.
Yeah.
If I was messing with somebody, I would set it to shutdown.
Yeah.
Because like you turn on your machine and then you go and you get a cup of coffee and you come back and it's like, I could have sworn I turned the machine on. So you turn on the machine and then you go to like talk to your coworker while it's booting because you got time. You come back and it could have sworn I booted it up. And after like the second or third,
what's wrong with my power button? Why isn't it turning on?
Well, no, like it'll flash and like you start to see the messages like, okay, cool, I'll come back when it's done.
Yeah.
So after the second or third time, they usually clue in that something's weird and they'll sit down and actually watch it.
Right. So there you go. Boot loops for fun and profit. Maybe not profit, but for fun. All right. You got a couple more, right?
I do. So one of them is if we do something that messes with our user files. So I'm just going to shred them.
Because if you're going to delete a user file, you might as well do it with something like shred.
Right, panache, because you don't want to accidentally like be able to recover it.
I know, you don't want to like be able to undelete a file.
Right. Yeah. So for those of you who may not know, shred will overwrite a file multiple times with garbage, and that allows us to not be able to recover the file because it's been overwritten a certain number of times, or actually a range of a certain number of times, and it's random to ensure that it can't be recovered with disk recovery utilities. But these two files are incredibly important because this has all of our user account definition stuff in it. And so if we have to rebuild it, like I could probably guess root, right? Because that's UID 0, GID 0. And I could probably like use the password command to set a password, like, okay, home directory, all that stuff. But do I remember every user that we have for application ownership? Like,
yeah,
what does Apache user account definition look like? Or I don't even know. There's like the rsyslog user account.
Yeah, there's a ton of built-in users that you never even think about because they come out of the box already on the system. There's probably 20 of them. I never really even counted them. There's a bunch.
And those are owned by root. Oh, it's still in memory. There we go. So you start to see things like this where we don't know who this user is because it's not in cache, and we can't look it up in Etsy password anymore. It's owned by this UID number, and we'll see
when so the Linux kernel does treat the root user differently, like not necessarily external from Etsy password and Etsy shadow, but it must have some built-in stuff that recognizes 0 as root. Because when I was doing my experiment with the AWS thing, I actually wanted to, instead of making an admin account, make a new account named root that was a normal user account so that people would try to attack that. And I couldn't figure out how to get it done because there were too many things on the system that are like, no, 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 you can't make a user called root. So yeah, it does treat root specially. So that could be why you still see root listed there.
And then the other one, and this goes back to like being careful when you are working with devices, mkfs-t. So let's say I just created a new partition, dev sda1 or whatever, and I just oops, and I need to tell its file system name xfs and that.
You need the
There
number.
we go.
Yeah.
So oh, it's actually stopping me because it's already mounted.
Scott, once again.
Not roughly. These are all things I've done to myself in the past. I thought surely they would work, and then we find out that we've fortified Linux to make it less admin error prone.
Yeah, we've made Linux. We put a few guardrails on Linux. But yeah, Linux is traditionally known as the operating system that lets you totally back yourself into all the trouble. I guess that's changing. But
Look,
still, a lot of these things still worked. Like accidentally deleting the RPM database. That was fun.
even when it's unmounted, it's like, oh, are you sure you want to overwrite this existing file system? Man, smart.
Man, that makes me sad.
Things back in like RHEL 3. I don't even know.
How are you supposed to burn the new guy if all these guardrails are in place?
All right.
Ah,
Apparently we could add dash force and that would do it, but like using dash F is always questionable. Probably not a great
yeah, that's
default option to use.
not as easy as an oops, right? It's not easy to say it's an oops. All right, well, I think that's all of our examples for today, right? Did you have any final ones? I don't think you did. We're at the end of the list.
Nope, that's the end of the list. And Billy asked if Shred is SSD aware now. It is not. So you probably don't use it on SSDs because it'll actually like overwrite the SSD stuff a whole bunch of times in a row, which is not great for SSDs and can lead to lower SSD life if you're not careful. But usually when I use Shred, it's like I'm done with this. Like I need to get rid of my data and not have it out
Yeah.
there.
Yeah, usually when I'm using Shred, it's like on a drive that's about to go to a recycler or something. And I don't care if there's any drive life left in it because the alternative would have been putting a, drill press through it or something. So, yeah. Or putting it in the degausser. You ever use a degausser? Those are fun.
I have not. We had like big drive shredders that you just like throw the drive in and it's like
That sounds so much better.
yeah.
No, we had one at the college. It looked like a little microwave, except smaller. It just had a door on the front. You'd pop the drive in, close the door, hit a button, and like 30 seconds later, the disk came out totally unusable. I mean, totally unusable. You couldn't even pop it back into a system and put a new partition table on it. It was just unusable.
Well, yeah, because not only did you fry the disk itself, but you fried all of the controller boards and like
Yeah.
everything else that was in it too.
Yep. Yep. So pretty fun stuff. Pretty fun stuff. So I spent a number of days sitting in the server room next to the degausser whenever we would like decommission a bunch of servers at a time. All right. Well, I think we're done with the demos. So this has been a fun episode. We hope everyone's had a great year. We hope everyone has some time to relax around the holidays. Even if you don't celebrate, maybe all your coworkers are off and you can sit around and relax a little bit while there's no one bothering you.
And we will see everyone after the new year. We'll be back in January. We'll figure out that week what our episode's going to be on because we haven't gotten that far.
Yeah, we'll plan that out when we get back. There's no reason to think that far ahead because we're going to forget it between now and then anyway.
Fair enough.
All right, folks. Well, everybody have a great new year. Have a great 2025, and we'll see you when we get back next year.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.